Our last but not least title is Sustain and Spread Impacts Assessment of the High Line.
Hi everyone, I'm Marshall, and this is my presentation partner Erin, and we're going to be talking about our work that we did for the Friends of the High Line. So just a brief agenda. First, we're going to do a basic overview of what the High Line is. Then we're going to go into our goals and our research questions. And we're going to overview the urban heat island mitigation as it applies to the High Line. And then Erin is going to go over key performance indicator research, as well as the environmental benefits of the High Line. So if you don't already know, the High Line is a 1.4 mile long elevated greenway, which is also a park, and it runs from 18th Street to 34th Street, and the Friends of the High Line is basically who manages the park and who got it to be revitalized into a park in the first place. So some history of the High Line: it operated as a railroad for like Nabisco and Bell Laboratories up until the year 1980 when it was abandoned. And after it was abandoned, it became kind of overgrown with these shrubs and some trees. And ultimately there was a question by the city of what they were going to do with the park. And Friends of the High Line stepped in to basically advocate for turning it into this elevated park. So our goals for this project were to basically quantify the environmental benefits of the High Line, as well as framing an internal and external sustainability narrative of the High Line as a green roof. So who here's been to the High Line? Almost everybody. So you guys already know basically the recreational benefits and some of the economic benefits potentially of the High Line, but what you might not know is that it also serves a number of environmental benefits. So the first is urban heat island effect mitigation, as the previous team spoke to a little bit earlier, as well as stormwater retention, which also goes along with what was said about the Javits Center rooftop, helping to decrease basically combined sewage overflows. And finally, it also serves a variety of ecosystem services. So that's like pollinator support, providing habitat to various species and things like that. So our deliverables for this project are first our research on the Living Architecture Performance Tool, which is basically a rating system for green roofs. We also did research into key performance indicators as they're applied to urban parks. And we created the sustainability section of the High Line's employee handbook and created an interactive map to go along with that. And we also contributed to the urban heat island research, specifically with an eye toward the High Line. So speaking a little bit more on the urban heat island effect, basically, yeah, it's the phenomenon that urban areas are about 2 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than their rural and suburban counterparts. And green roofs like the High Line are basically the key solution to kind of mitigating these issues. So some of the negative impacts of the urban heat island are first health impacts. So those include heat illnesses as well as pollution-related illnesses, and also increased energy use and GHG emissions, which are basically due to increased air conditioning and things like that. Decreased water quality, again, because of pollution, and also warming up stormwater, and economic costs, which are associated with all of these, and these all kind of interact with each other. So back to the urban heat island effect, basically what we did is utilizing thermal imagery. So what this involves is utilizing basically data from the United States Geological Survey, and this comes from satellites. And so the satellite data allows us to basically measure land surface temperature as well as vegetation indices. So specifically for the High Line, there was a little bit of a challenge in analyzing the way that these the way that the land surface and the vegetation changed over time, and that's due to the fact that this data has a 30-meter resolution, so that's about the size of a baseball diamond, and as you can imagine, the High Line is a lot of times a little bit narrower than that. So it was a little bit difficult to understand basically how these trends changed over the timeline for the High Line, but basically we thought that we raised a lot of important questions and look forward to seeing if there's more research on this front. And now Erin will talk about KPIs.
Okay, so just going back to our original goal of quantifying the environmental benefits that the High Line provides for its community, we wanted to create a set of criteria for KPIs in urban parks to help bridge the gap between the external narrative and internal metrics. So a KPI, or a key performance indicator, is a set of metrics that help indicate how an urban park is performing within its community. And actually KPIs are used across all different industries, but we wanted to focus on urban parks in order to help the Highline. And so our goal with this research was ultimately to create an operations dashboard for the Highline. So the Highline actually does, they record a lot of measurements in the park itself, but their issue right now is that they record too many. And so the goal of a KPI is to be able to see how a park is performing and to see how they can make improvements. And so right now the Highline doesn't exactly know what sort of improvements they need to be making. So we wanted to narrow in that focus, and in order to do so, we looked to different urban parks throughout the nation to see what they were doing and what kind of KPIs they were using. So the 3 parks that we looked into was the Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, the 606 in Chicago, and the Atlanta Beltline in Atlanta, Georgia. And we chose these parks specifically because they each had some sort of similarity with the Highline. However, through research and communications with these parks directors, we discovered that none of these parks actually use a standardized set of KPIs to perform measurements in the park. And so we realized that with KPIs in urban parks, this is a relatively new concept in urban parks, and so we were kind of going into uncharted territory. So instead, we turned to the LAPT to help create this set of measurements for the Highline. So the LAPT is a rating system and resource for green roofs and walls, and So the LAPT actually stands for the Living Architecture Performance Tool. And this tool was actually just recently launched earlier this year in 2018 by the Green Infrastructure Foundation. And this organization had reached out to the Highline because they wanted the Highline to participate in their pilot program. So what we did with this tool was we analyzed it. We went through all of the different credits that it provides and the different measurements. And we ultimately compiled everything into this spreadsheet, and this is just a little screenshot of it. And we wanted to see how it might apply to the Highline, because as we were doing this KPI research and realizing that there wasn't a standardized set of metrics for urban parks, we realized that this was a form of metrics for green roofs. And if you think about the Highline, it's kind of like a combination between an urban park and a green roof. So once we created this spreadsheet, we then looked into specific credits that the LAPT uses, and we ultimately wanted to see to actually be able to quantify the environmental benefits that the Highline produces for its community. And so a couple of the calculations that we performed was stormwater retention and ecosystem services. So for stormwater retention, we discovered that the Highline is actually in the 99th percentile of events, which is to say that this park can retains stormwater with even the strongest of storms in the area. And then in regards to ecosystem services, we discovered that the Highline hosts a variety of plant species. So actually in 2017, the Highline recorded approximately 400 plant species. And this includes plants that attract pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, and as well as plants that are locally adapted. And so that also provides benefits for the community and for the environment. So lastly, we created this employee sustainability handbook. So in conversations with the Friends of the Highline, we discovered that they are in need of a sort of sustainability handbook to help guide the employees at this organization and just to help increase awareness on common consumption patterns within a traditional office environment. And so our purpose in creating this handbook was to help employees adopt practices that will align with the Highline's sustainability-focused philosophy. And then as well as creating this handbook for the Highline, we also provided a section for internal use that was kind of a compilation of all of our case studies and external guides that we discovered that other companies utilize with their employees. So in conclusion, through this project, we discovered that urban green spaces provide so many environmental benefits for its community. However, we also discovered that quantifying these benefits is not always the easiest task. And in fact, this area of measurement is kind of just beginning to be researched and explored. But it's also very necessary because in developing a standardized set of metrics, urban parks like the Highline can improve its benefits to the community and to the environment as a whole. So, thank you.
Could you elaborate a little bit on some of the things you included in the handbook and ways that those employees could be living more sustainably in the office?
Yeah, so one of the main things that we looked at was the sort of day in the life of employees, and that's taking them from when they first come to the Highline, like through transportation, to when they leave the office. And so through that, we included a variety of different things that the Highline provides for employees to have a more sustainable office life. For instance, discounts on city bike memberships, as well as supplying reusable cups and cutlery within the office space, as well as we also supplied a map of the surrounding area that had sustainable businesses in it. So, sure, yeah. So, yes, this was created by Marshall and Julia, and it's a really beautiful interactive map where people can look for sustainable both like coffee shops and boutiques, as well as including city bike stations there. And yeah, those formed the main sections of it, and we also calculated how much different sustainable choices would benefit employees economically as well. So those were the main things that we included within the guideline.
Hi, how are you? What were some of the things that you found that could be improved, that you suggested?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Could be improved in which sense?
In terms of environmental impacts, or in the ways in which they're operating their business. What are some of the ways that you found that could be done better to reduce impacts?
So just to clarify, our task in this project was not to tell the Highline what could be improved, but sort of provide them with some information of how they themselves can monitor what could be improved. So we didn't have access to their data, so we couldn't really tell this could be improved or this other area could be improved. But we did provide them with all of the research that we did on other parks, and as well as external research to help them sort of identify the specific areas within the office. And in terms of the sustainability section of the employee handbook, we again don't know what the Highline employees are currently doing, but we did want to provide an extra incentive for the current and for incoming employees as well to use this set of sort of guidelines to guide their behavior in the office.
That's a very good question. They were actually ready to give us some proprietary data. We were very nervous about signing agreements about proprietary data. So we didn't get that far in terms of unlocking. But thank you for the question.
It sounds like your focus was largely the environmental impact, but in terms of assessing the impact of the parks from a sustainability perspective, there's also the social components to that. Did you guys think about that in the assessment in terms of impacts on things like property values and low-cost housing and the ways that these parks can have such a positive impact on a neighborhood, but with some downsides depending on where you are in the income ladder and so on?
Yes, absolutely. So in the beginning, actually, when we were communicating with the client, they made it quite clear that they do want us to look at the environmental impact specifically, so we did narrow our focus to that. However, many of the research, in a lot of our research, we did encounter a lot of the social benefits or maybe downsides, as you're suggesting, of such urban green spaces, and especially in the Living Architecture Performance Tool, some of the sections did focus on specifically the community benefits that green roofs can provide. So this was on the outskirts of our project, but it was considered in some areas.
I want to thank all the teams for those excellent presentations. We're finishing right on time. Thank you for your questions, and thank everyone for attending. And of course, the next part of this is to attend the poster session for the qualitative methods under Professor Dale's leadership, right next door in the reception area. So it'll be a nice chance to chat and get to know each other better. So thanks again, and good luck with all your presentations to your actual clients next week. Okay, thank you.